the racial dynamics in Severance continue to show up.
Yes.
You have this white man trying to tell a black professional how they should speak and to essentially dumb down their language to kind of bring them down to his level, right? You oversimplify your speech. The second thing that bothered me, and I'm glad Milchick kind of pointed it out, is this reality of like, this white man is essentially forcing me, Milchick, as a black person to do part of his job.
Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
And today we're here to talk about season 2 of Severance, episode 9.
One more, bro. This season kind of flew by.
It does feel satisfying. Like, so much has happened and we have learned so much. I'm like not really mad. It's been a very satisfying season so far, and I have high hopes for the finale.
I'd agree.
I will say, I feel like this episode, I still liked it, but this has been the most filler-ish episode that we've had, I think.
More than last week for you?
Yeah, because to me, last week was not filler. Last week was like really developing a character.
Okay.
That being said, I think there were still some informative moments today.
Oh, for sure.
The very first thing I wrote down was, I'm sorry, but WTF.
Wait, what is that in reference to?
About the breakfast scene.
Oh. Hey, bro, that was some psychotic shit, yo.
What is going on there?
She cut it up in like slices and put them in a circle around the face.
And then she cut it into the most tiny little
dog.
A lot of control in that relationship.
And
because then why he go and say, I wish you would eat them raw? First of all, I don't like that sentence. And I don't like that sentence being said from a father to a daughter.
Hey, yo.
But like something about the scene was weird. Like, why are you watching her eat? First of all, she said, "Are you gonna eat?" He said, "No, I'll watch." I don't like that sentence either.
Nah, bro.
Very, very weird. Very weird vibes. It's making me think. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had a comment. I think I already told you about this, but we had a comment on our YouTube video where somebody was kind of pointing out the difference between how we relate to and interpret Milchick versus Helly.
Yeah.
And how we have a lot of grace for Milchick.
I've thought about that a lot.
Me too. I've been thinking about that a lot as well. I definitely think that was like a little personal bias jumping out.
Well, this episode confirmed what the person was saying. Mm-hmm. And you see way more that we already kind of had about the relationship that Helena has with her father. Extremely manipulative. And I love what Ben Stiller said at the end of the episode when they were like, Helly has all of these people all in the severed world that could be her family. But Helena lives with her father and she still gets nothing. She lives with the person that probably knows her the best, and she's still like the most alone that she possibly can be. And it does kind of confirm everything that we were thinking earlier on this season of her entire arc, at least in this season of Severance, is to prove her worth to her father.
I think there's a lot of what we said about Milchick that can and should be applied to Helly. I think the fact that like she's operating in a system that is terrible, but like she herself within that system is being mistreated and is doing the things that she's doing to try to combat that.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. I think the difference is that Milchick's position in the system is just not the same as Helly's.
Way less power.
And so I think that also lends itself to a slightly different interpretation of who they are and what they do. In some ways, her position is, like you're saying, giving her more power. But it's also complicated by the fact that it's her father. And there's this weird dynamic there. And yes, while she has relative privilege compared to someone like Milchick, a relationship to your father is a controlling factor. I think we can assume a few things. That she grew up in much the same way as a Miss Huang or a Miss Cobell. Yeah. I think we can make that assumption, meaning that this stuff has been instilled in her since she was a young child. And it's double because it's literally her family. I don't think she has as many outs or options as you would want to assume. So that is helping me kind of interpret her story and her decision making a little bit. Now, that being said, I still think she's doing some things that are uncalled for and unnecessary. You would have to do that with Mark. That was not needed. But I do understand you're operating from a place of hurt, and obviously now you're operating from a place of trying to control something. Yeah. You are looking for what is it in your life that you can actually control, because so many aspects of your life are controlled by your father, much in the same way that Helly R was talking about how the things in her life are controlled by you. You control what she wears and how she does her hair and all that stuff. Well, now we know your father is a very controlling figure in your life. He controls what you eat. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a say in how you present yourself.
Wearing the same thing over and over again. That's probably Helena's dad's idea. Really.
There's so many things about her life that are also controlled either directly by her father or by the ideology that he has instilled in her.
Something that I noticed, and I'll get a little bit into Milchick later on, but since we're on Helena, in some ways, Helena has given Helly a lot more agency in the severed world. Helly, in that moment that she has with Milchick in his office, shares a lot about how the power dynamics have kind of shifted. Yes, Milchick is in charge, but now Helly knows that she can't get fired because she knows who she is. And so those moments where he's like, you're being insubordination, and then says, close the door behind you, and she doesn't listen, there is virtually nothing that Milchick can do now.
Yeah, I mean, well, it gives her leverage.
Yes, maybe that's the better word.
Yeah, she has leverage that she can now use. I think we'll find that there are definitely limits to how far she can take that.
Yeah. And why is her dad down there?
Okay, and why is he talking about you lied to me? You're talking to the wrong
bro. That
person.
Man freaks me the F out, bro. Every time he's on the screen, I'm like,
something is wrong with him.
Like, that's not a human. I'm sorry.
That's not a normal man.
Every time I see those theories about like maybe these people are aliens,
he might be.
I would be happy to accept that just for him, because I refuse to believe there's a soul inside behind those eyes.
Why do you walk like that? Why do you talk like
Everything.
that?
Don't like it. Don't like it. Milchick, man. The scene that he has with Mr. Drummond, that was triggering me so much.
Such a good scene.
So two things. One, the racial dynamics in Severance continue to show up.
Yes.
One, in the space that you have this white man trying to tell a black professional how they should speak and to essentially dumb down their language to kind of bring them down to his level, right? You oversimplify your speech, whether it's to understand it or if it's just a power move, right? With Milchick. The second thing that bothered me, and I'm glad Milchick kind of pointed it out, is this reality of like, this white man is essentially forcing me, Milchick, as a black person, to do part of his job. And I'm glad that he pointed that out of like, I'm not in charge of what these severed people do on the outside, but you're giving me more work than what my job description actually requires. I'm glad Milchick sort of regained some version of pride in like his individual self. It doesn't matter how well you present yourself, how professional present yourself. None of that matters the second some of these white people in positions of power think that you're trying to one up them, even if you're not doing anything but being your authentic self. So I'm glad that he kind of spoke at him with like some real energy, because bro, you think that you will gain their approval in some way or form. And I'm not saying that that's why he's like speaking professional or the language that he's using, but I'm just saying that the way that he kind of presents himself, hopefully he thinks he'll be rewarded. And I think he's realizing the moment Mr. Drummond spoke down to Milchick, I think he realizes there's nothing that I can do that's ever going to please y'all. You still want me to be beneath you, even though I'm doing part of your job and I'm probably doing better at it than you could possibly do, in my opinion.
What I thought of that I think you kind of were getting at is there is a history of like black people's language being policed.
Yes.
That term uppity. If white people thought that you were presenting yourself in a way that made you seem as their equal, then they would call you uppity. They would try to put you in your place. They would try to humble you. And that was definitely the undertone of that conversation.
Bro.
Whether that's just meant to be something that we as viewers read into the story, or if that's like the actual dynamic at play was in the story, I guess that could be up for debate. I do think it's worth noting, like, I know we have Natalie, but apparently that character was not written originally to be played by a black woman. So outside of Natalie, Milchick is the only black person we've seen in this company, period.
Yeah.
So I think we could make the assumption, or we could infer that those racial dynamics are also existing within the show between those two characters. But yes, I definitely thought about that need to just take black people down a notch.
Yeah, man, I remember I had moments like that in high school all the time, bro. It didn't matter when I was taking AP Calc or chemistry. It didn't matter if I was playing on the sports team. It didn't matter if I sang in the choir, did a bunch of extracurricular activities. Some of those white people were refusing to see me on the same playing field as them. It didn't matter what I did. It's out of your control at that point. Like, there's nothing you can do. Take that burden, free yourself, release it. I'm very glad he stood up for himself. Like, literally, I don't know if you caught it when we were watching. I literally stuck my middle finger at the TV.
Yeah, I did. I do have to say, what he say? Hold on, let me pull up because I had it. Devour feculence.
You gonna start using that?
That's good stuff right there. That is good stuff right there. I do think like it's worth noting on the conversation of like language and self-presentation for Black people and professionalism and all this stuff. It's like this weird line that people have to toe, because on the one hand, the reason why so many Black people, especially I want to say like middle and upper middle income Black people, the reason why so many Black people are so careful about their presentation, you know, this is how you have slang and patois and dialects across the globe and country being discouraged in households. And like my grandfather, Jamaican, never heard that man speak patois a day in my life. Yeah, is because of this. Like, there's this understanding that we have to present ourselves in a certain way in order to gain access to these spaces, right? Like, there is a certain level of this presentation that Milchick has to do and has to put on in order to be there. But then if you do too much, if you become too much of a threat, if you play the role too well, all of a sudden there's this desire to humble you and to put you back in your place. Yeah. It's a very interesting line to toe. So much of that conversation was fueled not really by the disrespect that he was facing in the moment from Drummond, but by the disrespect that he was facing from everybody else. You kind of saw throughout the episode, like, nobody's listening to him. Like, nobody's respecting his authority. Yeah. Helly's not really listening. Mark is not there. He's not coming in. Dylan's not really listening. And you see him have all these moments where he's giving people orders and telling them to do things, and they're all just being like, we do not care. We do not care. And I think all of the buildup of all of that disrespect is what made that moment land in that way for him.
There is something about the phone call that he had with Mark that did make me wonder if there's still some hope left for Milchick.
The work is just work, right?
Yes. And you could see Milchick got very emotional. Like, his eyes got a little bit more teary-eyed, and you could see him trying to process it. He's looking at the painting on the wall. He's taking a long time to respond to Mark. And I think the non-answer is the answer, at least for the viewer, in terms of what that means for him when Mark asks him that question.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that he will turn on the company. I don't think that the development of all of the characters who work for Lumon is meant to bring them to a place of revolt.
Yeah, yes.
But I think it's just adding a layer to the story, and it's giving us another perspective through which to view the story. I think we'll see a lot of development, a lot of evolution in this character. I'm not convinced it'll end with his rebelling.
No.
I think what that was his arc so far. We've kind of seen is he gives this place his all, his everything. Yeah. And when he does not receive the validation for his efforts that he wants, it crushes him, and it crushes his self-esteem and his sense of self-worth. And he needed to be told, like, this is just work. It's not everything. There are things beyond this place that matter, and you do not need to be giving your all and all of your energy and time and soul to this place. Yeah. It's just a job at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think that was necessary for his character to hear, and I think that's a necessary message for us.
Yeah, this is something that we talked about in the first season of Severance, where I sort of shared the experience that one of my former bosses said that, like, bro, we're all just stewards for this job. The second you leave, they are already starting the process of finding a replacement. And I think Milchick needed to hear that, but also really reflect on, I think it was Helly that brought up when they hired Milchick in Miss Cabell's position with what sort of happened with Miss Huang and everything there, it was just another reminder of like, yeah, bro, look how quickly they scapegoated her and cut her loose and try to drop you in that position. And now you're not getting any support from Lumon at all. And you can feel that Milchick recognizes they're on the verge of probably doing the same thing to him also. I think that moment sort of recentered him a bit, or maybe even forced him to really rethink about how much care and time are you putting into this company that's not reciprocating it back to you at all. I think Helena reminding him of the thing that happened to Miss Cobell, bro, that could happen to you too. Like, you need to think about that. I don't think he will turncoat. I think what Milchick will probably represent is that when things start to crumble at Lumon, Milchick and maybe people that have experienced things like him won't be on the front lines to keep it running or to fight back. I think it'll be one of those moments where it's just kind of like, I'm just going to sit back and I can see that sort of happening. I want to talk a little bit about Irving. One, I hope we still see more of him, primarily because Jonathan Tour is such a good actor. If we didn't get anything left of Irving, I think I'd be okay. There's a couple of things that I noticed about the scene that Irving has with Burt. The first is that Audi Irving in the real world is looking to Burt and saying like, I'm ready to have this relationship. I'm ready to have this experience that I'm telling you I've never had. And in season 1, when Burt wanted to have that in the any world with Irving, Irving says, I'm not ready. So to hear them both say, where one of them says, I'm ready, the other one says, I'm out, I think that's a full character growth moment for Irving. There's also this thing that I really appreciated with Burt's character when he was talking to Irving. We talked a little bit about this earlier on of like them, Severance choosing this to be a gay couple, I think was intentional. And there's a moment when Burt says, I wanted to go into the severed world to like regain my innocence, to regain my cleanliness, right? But while he was there is when he found true love with Irving in that severed space. And it just sort of reaffirmed to him that like there was nothing inherently wrong with who he was as a person, because he went in there and he was able to find that love. And so I thought that that was just like a really powerful message that we got for both characters, and how in both instances they were able to learn something from their outie and they didn't even realize it until this episode.
It's very interesting, all of the different things that people use Severance for, and all of the different interpretations they have of what it does. Yeah. What they all have in common is that it's this idea of a clean slate, and you're running away from the things about you that you think are dirty or unwanted. I mean, what we basically come to find out is it's in fact not a clean slate. We obviously saw that with Mark. He was running away from his grief. To him, the grief was just, it was unwanted. It was something that he wanted to have nothing to do with, and he thought if he can sever himself, give himself this clean slate, where that's not happening. Now we've seen it with Burt. We don't know 100% with Irving. I feel like we don't have a 100% clear idea. We know now with Dylan that it's like this idea of him on his outie being incapable and not enough. And so he now has this opportunity to be this productive person who can provide for his family. And we've seen this with Helena. We've seen Helena trying to run away from this part of her life that she feels controlled by, thinking that she's get this clean slate of freedom. But in all of these cases, all of their innies end up dealing with the repercussions of this in some way. It just follows them there. Running away from yourself and running away from your problems is not going to solve them. And the only way to really come to terms with who you are is to face those parts of yourself that you do not like. And maybe you choose to change them. That's an option if it's necessary. Or you choose to say, this is me and I can reclaim this as part of my person. But I really like how they're showing that it's just a part of human nature to want to run away from things and run away from those problems. But it doesn't work. I do want to talk briefly about Dylan. First of all, I don't think that guy's resigning. I feel like next episode he's gonna like turn around and go back inside.
Sup, dudes?
I think he's gonna turn around and go back. I'm just not accepting that. But I do think that I remember when we first talked about his storyline with his wife, and we were talking about how there was kind of like one of two ways it could go. It could go, it could go in the way of like he kind of betrays everybody because he doesn't want to lose this thing that he has with the wife, or it could go the way that it basically has gone, wherein having this relationship with the wife just shows him the limitations of what he can actually have and what he cannot actually have. That's essentially what happened, right? Like he's seeing in real time, like there is nowhere for this to go.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I'm getting a taste of what I could experience, but I'm not ever going to actually have the real thing. Now, at this point in the story, that has caused him to resign, which is still bad for Lumon. I personally think he'll be back. But I think it's so ironic because you know that Milchick and Lumon, they thought they were so smart. They thought, what we're going to do is we're going to basically trick them into being happy, right? We'll give them a little bit of what they want. We'll make them feel like content, so they can become complacent with things, and they'll stop fighting back. And it had the exact opposite effect. And I think that this is something that happens so often with real world capitalism and oppressive movements. I think this is why capitalism goes through these phases of like essentially decay over time. Is because that's how it essentially functions. You're giving people this sense of contentment, this sense of success, and you people up top are thinking, and that'll keep them at bay. But over time, all it eventually does is people become more and more aware of the limitations of the things that they still cannot have and do not have access to. And it eventually bubbles over to a turning point. I also think like a good example of this, I mean, this is kind of a stretch, but like, bear with me. The Haitian Revolution. Part of the reason why the Haitian Revolution happened is because in Haiti at the time, they were not doing like the procreation with slaves and like the breeding of slaves that they were doing in America, because they're thinking like essentially they're thinking we'll just work them till they die. That was basically what they did. But part of what that did was it meant that the vast majority of the slaves in Haiti remembered freedom. They knew it. They had experienced it. And so because of that, they were able to galvanize this effort to overturn the system because they knew something outside of it. And that's the part of the contrast, obviously, to slavery in America, wherein people experienced that for generations and generations and generations and didn't know anything outside of it. And so while there was revolt happening, it was harder to organize something to the extent of what happened in Haiti. And for lots of other reasons, there's lots of other reasons. It's just a good reminder, like, they don't have one over on us as much as they think they do and as much as they try to convince us that they do. Like earlier in the season, Mark had that whole thing with Helena in the hallway where he was like, they know everything. They're one step ahead of us all the time. It can feel like that. And I think right now is one of those times where it feels like that. There's just always something happening. And, you know, this administration and this movement behind it, they've been planning all this stuff for decades and decades and decades, and they've been laying the groundwork for this. Like, how can we possibly overcome it? But like, that's part of the tactic, is they want you to think that they know you so well that you can't do anything about it. And it's not true. They make mistakes, so they don't know us that well. They misread the situation, and we have to prove that to them. So I'm hoping that that's what we'll see from Dylan next episode, that he'll turn back around and prove like, y'all didn't have this on me. This is not going to defeat me. I'll be back.
I think what you're saying tracks though with the experience, the example you gave with the Haitian Revolution, because something changed in Dylan once they turned him on with overtime contingency, and he was in the house and he hugged his son. From that point onward, the things that he felt like gave him fulfillment, like winning all of these prizes or getting the food, like the waffle, or like the toys and trinkets that they would give him, and then he realized none of that stuff matters. What was really important to him, or what he realized would eventually be important to him, was the thing that he never had before. I'm trying to remember how he said it to his wife, but there was this thing that essentially that Dylan said. He was like, when his wife says to him like, you have so much going for you, and he was like, no, I actually don't. Like, the things that I felt like were giving my life meaning, they don't really matter anymore. Like, they're inconsequential, they're insignificant. This is what I'm really going for. And I know it was like a little bit out of the blue with the ring and everything, but I think this is his way of trying to hold on to the preview of what a fulfilled life could actually feel like. And so I think it definitely tracks.
I think next week's going to be crazy. Is next week longer than usual? Because you guys have a lot to do.
No, it's only 44 minutes. That's why I was a little bit confused, because I looked at both of the last week's episode was 37. This week's was 44. Next week is 44. So I'm like, we're going to be left in another cliffhanger. We're going to, I don't know. See you guys in 2027.
Y'all better be filming right now.
I think they've already been writing for season 3, but it's going to take, well, I don't know, maybe, because the writer strike hurt things a lot. Hopefully we don't get another one. That'd really suck, but
that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think Hollywood has enough sympathy to pull that off right now.
I don't think Hollywood has enough money to pull that off right now. Marvel ain't making billions of dollars for y'all no more, so this isn't something that you can risk. Well, as always, thank you all so much for tuning in. We're excited for the finale. Let us know what you guys thought about this episode in the comment section below. We really appreciate the support that you guys have been giving us for literally everything that we put out there. It really does mean a lot. But yeah, with that, we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Peace.